Good evening, y'all, man. Yo, this is Reef'Lik.
And this is Reef'Lik.
And this is Reef'Lik.
Hey!
Anime Horror Gang! What's good with y'all, man? Got another video.
Today we're going to be reacting to Dark Knights.
Yo, shout out to Dark Knight, man. Always be making some fire content. We can't wait to get into this video.
So please like, comment, subscribe, and join our big happy family.
Yo, please join Anime Horror Gang, man. We getting stronger every day, you feel me? Every day. To this day, we're getting stronger. To this day, we're getting stronger. You're right to the cookout, the wedding. So please join us. Make this family bigger. Make it bigger. So sit back, relax, and enjoy.
This is probably going to turn out less of a story and more like a confession. Only my ex-missus and a few close mates know about what I'm about to tell you. Otherwise, you'd never guess it just from looking at me. You'd think I was some balding, church-going Middle Englander whose pulse had never risen about 70 beats per minute. But for about 6 months back in the mid-1980s, I led quite a different life from the one I have now. You see, I just married my then-girlfriend, and we were in the process of starting up a little family. And right when she was 3 months pregnant, Margaret Thatcher's Tory government decided to throw a spanner in the works. I lost my job. I was on the dole. I had a baby on the way, and it was looking like we were going to lose the house.
Wow.
I tried my best to find a job that would meet our expenses, but it was almost impossible. And as time went by, I got increasingly desperate and increasingly depressed, and I wasn't doing my job as the main breadwinner.
That's how it be though, man. You gotta keep on going. Don't give up.
The Jip isn't the real guy's name, and I don't reckon he'd appreciate me gobbling off about our mutual history. So I'll just use his old nickname that I don't imagine he goes by anymore. Me and Jeb knew each other since secondary school, and although we weren't exactly best mates, we were still quite pally and lead on to each other if ever we were out and about. So one day, I'm on my way back from the door when I see Jeb outside one of the local pubs. I say hi. I have a whinge about the lines on the door, and turns out he was on his way into the pub, so he invites me in for a drink. I'm absolutely skinflint. At this point, I didn't have 2 pennies to rub together after putting food in the cupboards. But as much as I politely decline him, he insists on getting me a few pints. The clincher for me was him saying, "You look dead stressed, mate. I reckon you deserve a pint." Never a truer word was said. The first sip of the pint was like a wave of calm rusher over me. Not so much because of the ale, but because I realized it had been about 2 or 3 months since I'd actually sat down and drank a freshly pulled pint of lager. And let me tell you, I hadn't missed it. Then when it comes to paying, Jeb pulls out his proper wad of notes, all 20s as well.
Got bands.
My mind is back on my money troubles. So obviously, this seeps into the conversation, and I end up telling him about the redundancy. At the door wasn't enough to get baby clothes, all my woes basically. Jeb then gets out this little wad of notes, looks me in the eye, and says, "How much do you need?" This is where I can hear a lot of you saying, "Why don't you just take the money?"
No.
You know what?
See, I feel like don't take money from people because like you don't know what type of person that is, and you don't know where they got that money from. So just y'all, if y'all going through problems and y'all don't got no money, and you about to have a kid on the way, I feel like, or you just about to like get evicted from your house and stuff, y'all. I feel like try your best to find at least somewhere to go. As a job that will at least hire you and give you as much hours as they can. Don't take nothing from nobody because I feel like people always use that for like an excuse to always get back at you. Like, oh, remember I did this for you? Remember I did that for you?
Yeah.
And stuff. No, like don't.
That never works out.
Don't accept handouts, y'all. Don't accept handouts. I'm cool with the drink, but don't accept handouts. I'll get my own money. I don't want that.
You're right. I should have just swallowed my pride and taken his money, even if it made me feel pathetic.
Nah,
But
bro.
that's just
No
it,
handouts.
isn't it? Pride. People get weird when it comes to their egos, and for whatever reason, my ego just couldn't let me accept his charity. And even if loads of you don't get why I refused it, that doesn't really matter, because Jeb did. Jeb saw that pride in me and was true to his
5-hour energy.
I'm just not accepting handouts. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not that type of person.
nature. He saw an opportunity. You see, Jeb came in to remind me of an old war film my dad used to watch whenever it was on the telly. It's about this American prisoner in a Japanese prisoner of war camp, who basically ends up running the place because he smuggles in whatever contraband people want. He gives people what they want, and in turn, he uses that to manipulate them. This bloke ends up with the name King Rat. And let me tell you, Jeb was King Rat. So instead of just offering me money, he offered me a job. He said he'd pay me 300 pounds to pick up a car for him. Only trouble was that he bought the car from a bloke in Bristol. So that meant getting the train down there so I could drive it back. For reference, 300 pounds was a lot of money for what he was asking me to do, which amounted to maybe half a day's work at the most. I knew that there was a catch, that the car might be in a bad neck or, God forbid, it might be stolen. But I really wasn't in the position to be turning down that kind of money. Especially when he said that if I got the car back in one piece, there'd be more work in it for me. So that's how I started working with, or more accurately, for Jeb. I thought he was a used car dealer. I really was that innocent. But after a couple of runs, he let me in on a little secret. The cars weren't the object of value in those little transactions. It was what was in them. I had driven 4 different cars around various parts of the UK at that point, and not once did I realize that hollowed out compartments of the doors that had been stuffed with imported Moroccan hashish.
Nah, that coke. Nah, bro.
Kick off, resign?
Nah, bro.
I knew that there was a catch.
Yeah,
don't get into that.
I was a bit annoyed that I hadn't been fully informed from the get-go.
Thank you. Breaking Bad?
Yes.
Perfect example. Breaking Bad.
Jib said that the very same ignorance was like a superpower. I'd passed police cars countless times, and I even stopped to ask for directions from one at one point. And at no point was I nervous, twitchy, or anything else that might have alerted them to exactly what I was transporting.
Your luck gonna run out sooner or later.
I was 26 going on 40. I looked like a bloody PE teacher or something. You'd never suspect me. I'll admit that.
Yo, stop it.
After that, I got way too comfy making the journeys. My doll disguise must have gotten in my head a bit, because when Jim offered me what amounted to a promotion, I jumped at the chance. In these new jobs, my pay would be about 650 pounds around, just about double the pay. And some of the trips would be to the next city over from us, an hour's driving time tops. It was a no-brainer. Half the work for double the pay? The only question was what I'd be transporting. And I'll never forget what Jib responded with when I asked him what would be in the cars. "Do you really want to know?" he said.
Nah.
No, I really didn't.
I won't even take that job.
As long as it wasn't a dead body in the boot or something equally as sinister, I really didn't want to know. So I started making these runs to a city relatively close by to us 3 times a week, getting the train out there, picking up a car from these Turkish blokes, and then driving back home. And I was getting just shy of $2,000 a week for it. The wife was ecstatic. I was telling her the half-truth that I was selling used cars with an old mate from school, and she was far too chuffed to ask any probing questions, but others did. And I ended up losing a couple of workmates because they thought I was holding out on them, hoarding the wealth or something. But Jib had me swear not to say a thing to anyone. And if I tried to get them in the door, he'd probably have dropped me like a live grenade. For 3 months, I worked that job. And the whole time, the cash was just rolling in. There was only ever one close call when a traffic cop on a motorbike pulled me over for having a faulty brake light. When I brought it up with Jim, he assured me that every car would undergo a full mod before I ever touched it. After that, there were no problems. I actually got quite pally with the Turkish blokes. I picked the cars up from 2. They ran a little restaurant/cafe type thing, and I used to pick the cars up from the delivery entrance around the back. The blokes will be sitting around this little table, chain-smoking cigars and drinking this muddy-looking coffee. They'd say hello, shake my hand, and sometimes offer me a coffee or one of their little syrupy pastries. Sometimes I'd partake, but mostly not. Then I'd take the keys off them, get in the car, and bugger off back home. Every single time, the restaurant would be buzzing. The shutters at the back would be open. It was a seamless transition of goods. Very subtle. That is right in plain sight. There was never any fuss, never any danger. It was always the same routine. This is why when I turned up at the Turkish place one Friday night and the place was closed, my spider senses started to tingle.
Yeah.
I go around the back to see the shutters down. But it's not like I could have just said, oh well, it's closed, I have to just get the train home. There was a lot of money at stake. It's not like it could have just gone back empty-handed. People have been killed for losing smaller amounts of drugs than that. It's just assumed you've stolen it. So I walk up to the shutters, and I can hear someone talking on the other side. Brilliant, I think. The meeting is still on. So I give the shutters a few knocks and wait for them to be open. As soon as I knock, the voices go quiet.
Oh.
And then, no one opens the shutters either. Again, my spidey senses are tingling, and I take it upon myself to announce who it is, just in case they think I'm the police or something. As soon as I do, I hear someone fiddling with the shutters. Then they start to slide open before stopping at about 2 feet. Again, very weird, and it's just silent on the other side. I call up help.
Bro, I feel like, if you're doing this, bro, and you're transporting stuff like that, make sure you have something on you. We don't condone this. I feel like you shouldn't be doing this at all. But, bro, if you know that you're going to run into problems like that, you should at least have something on you, bro. You can't just be dully just walking somewhere with nothing on you.
Yeah, that is true.
Bro, y'all don't
he's too comfortable with that, man. Like,
y'all don't do this. This is not it. Don't. I'd rather would have worked a 50-hour-a-week job than do this. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Don't do this, y'all. Don't do this.
Low quite softly using one of the Turkish bloke's names. All I hear is, come in, from the other side. So doing as I'm asked, I crouch down to crawl under the shutter. Then, just as I emerge on the other side, someone kicks me in the face so hard it makes my ears ring. All I can hear as I pick myself up is, get on your front, lay down on your front, before someone starts kneeling in the back of my back. It's the police. I remember thinking, you absolute chucklehead. You've gone and got yourself caught red-handed.
You chucklehead.
Only when they didn't handcuff me. Instead, they started to dye my hands with something that I'd later learned was a kind of industrial-strength sticky tape. My bell had been well and truly rang, but even in my punch-drunk haze, it hit me that there was something wrong with the situation. And unless he was some undercover bloke forced to carry tape instead of handcuffs or whatever, I might be in a lot more trouble than I first anticipated. Once my wrists, mouth, and ankles are taped up, the bloke then drags me to a corner of the store.
Why are you dragging him like that?
Tied up and gagged the 4 Turkish blokes. Each of them had the absolute senses beaten out of them. My heart racing as I get to thinking that I'm about to get the same treatment. But instead, he seems to just ignore me and resume some kind of speech he must have been giving the Turkish blokes. And that's when it slowly became clear who it was. It wasn't the police. It wasn't even some other gang or drug dealers with some axe to grind. It was a vigilante. I won't repeat exactly what he said. It was quite a long, drawn-out, and terrifying affair, and I think every third word would be the F word. And this is about to get obscene as it is. So I'll just sum it up. And what he said, what he kept referencing, was someone who died. I thought the Turks might have killed someone, and in a matter of speaking, I suppose they did. Because the bloke then, LEDs on that, it was his daughter that had died from heroin use, possibly having an overdose. But it could have been some other complication resulting from her addiction he never specified. Then at one point, he started ranting about how you sell it, but you don't use it. And I suddenly see that there are these big cling-filmed wrap packages on the table. The bloke must have arrived before they loaded the car up, and maybe even before the staff had arrived for the evening service. And all the evidence he needed that they'd sold heroin was right there for all to see. God knows how he found them. But he had. And for a long, it didn't look like any of us were going to get out of there alive. The first thing he did was start cutting open some of the packages while he was on his salad. But don't use it, rat. Then he starts trying to shovel it up some of the bloke's nose, working his way around, until he actually tried doing it to me too.
We all crave clarity and organization. We want a quiet space to think.
I thought I'd had it. Have some well-timed exhale and clean my nostrils out as he moved back onto the other blokes in a frenzy the whole time. I am just terrified. He's going to start using the knife in his hand, and that we're just seconds away from being slaughtered like sheep. But instead, he starts cutting the package wide open and dumping the contents all over us. He goes back for another and dumps the one on us, ranting and raving the whole time about how we're going to regret the day we're born. I just kept picturing the little girl I never get to see grow up. My ex-missus was less than a month from her due date, and the thought of her getting the news had been murdered was all I could think about. Not only that, but her finding out where I'd been getting the money from, that's what really got me the shame she'd feel, and the secret she'd have to keep from our daughter. I started to well up. I was so very, very out of my depth. I had given every bloody penny of that money back if I could just get back to my wife safely. And for the first time in my life, I actually prayed to God for literal salvation. Remember way back at the start when I said church going? This is why the whole time I'm praying, I've got my eyes sealed shut. I couldn't bear to watch the vigilante bloke stuck stabbing, knowing he'd probably work his way through all 4 Turkish blokes before finally turning his attentions to me. But in the end, I had to open them. I just couldn't stop myself. And when I did, I saw that God had answered my prayers. One of the Turkish blokes had somehow, God only knows, managed to work one of his hands out of the tape. To this day, the only way I can see him managing it is if he was cursed or blessed with being extremely sweaty. But either way, I just watched as a vigilante turns his back on us to fetch another package before the Turkish bloke just launches himself at him. I didn't really get a good look at what followed. Just looked like a lot of squirming arms and legs from where I was lying. Soundtracked by this man, a cacophony of grunts and Turkish swear words. But eventually, the vigilante fella goes limp, and the Turkish fella rolls off of him and crawls over to cut us free. About half an hour later, I'm sitting in a shuttered and empty Turkish restaurant, drinking this ultra-strong Turkish spirit, and smoking my first ever cigarette. The Turk took my clothes off of me, I'm guessing to burn. So I sat there. It was basically a waiter's uniform, smoking and drinking until the shakes were gone. In the meantime, now all kinds of different Turkish blokes turned up, presumably to deal with the vigilante's body and to clean everything down. By the time they let me back in the delivery room, it looked as good as new. Everything was clean and sparkly. The car had been wiped down. The fella had just completely disappeared. Finally, 3 hours after I arrived, I took the car keys and drove back home. When I arrived, I collected my wages and thanked him for the opportunity, but told him that that'd be my last delivery. When he asked why, I told them everything. And when I was done, he had to pick his jaw up off the floor. He ended up offering me a few $100 more on each run if I chose to carry on. But all I could think about was the moment I realized I might never see my kid grow up, and how no amount of money was worth risking that for. I ended up going back to the university during my daughter's first few years, and I'm happy to say that by the time she'd mastered potty training, I was working in this newfangled field of informational technology.
Yeah, bro, get a regular job, man. There ain't nothing wrong with a regular job.
More longevity to it than I foolishly first anticipated. I retired this year, and I'm proud to say that I have a few quid tucked away, at least enough to make myself comfortable. I and the ex-missus are on good terms. I see my daughter and young son a fair bit too, so can't complain there either. I'd like to think I've earned my twilight years. And it might sound a bit up to me here, but I think I'll appreciate them more than most, because I still remember a time in my life when things could have gone very differently, and in more ways than one. And then remember how that horrible cycle of greed, suffering, and death just carries on rolling, sight unseen, forever and ever.
Yo, this story was crazy.
Yeah, like, man, like, it really do be happening, too, also.
Yo, y'all, there ain't nothing wrong with working a 9 to 5. You know, just pick up some more hours. I know you probably ain't feeling it, but just pick up some more hours and start your own business, you know?
Yeah, because the business he was doing, man.
Like, that's not it. Like, don't do that stuff, y'all. Like, don't get into no drug stuff, and like, don't get into no that crazy stuff just to get some money, because that's not going to end well. Like, look in Breaking Bad, for example. That show is like a perfect example of why you shouldn't be doing that. So y'all, please don't be doing that. Just work a regular 9 to 5, y'all.
Yeah.
Just find a regular 9 to 5 that you know you can work, and just stack your money up from that. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, y'all, that's the video for today. Shout out to Dark Knight, man. Yo, we love your content. We're gonna keep on checking out more in the near future. So please like, comment, subscribe, and join our big happy family. So we'll see y'all later.
See you later.
We'll see y'all later. Peace.
Peace.